Throughout 2019, many ongoing prophetic fulfillments occurred, providing substantial evidence that we are truly living in the end time. We will look back at many of those events on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on this edition of End of the Age. Now, I haven't been back on the radio since we got back from our Israel tour, and I wanted to say what a wonderful tour we had. Jana, my wife, and myself are going to be doing a program on that next week. But I wanted to say that everybody that went on the tour with us real quick, those of you that got baptized and had a wonderful spiritual experience on the tour with us, if you'd like for me to help you find a true Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church, I know many of you, we were talking about that on the tour, email me, drobbins@endtime.com, or call me here at Endtime, 1-800-363-8463. And I've got contacts with thousands of churches all over the United States and around the world, and I would help you find one that teaches the truth and that will not join the world religious system and in the end time. So if you're looking for that, you just went on the tour, or anybody else that's looking for a true Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church, contact me here at End Time, and I'll do my best to find you a true Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church. So critical throughout the end time. Now, before I get into a lot of the prophetic fulfillments of 2019 and things that let us know we're in the end time, the Bible, I want to give you a quick update on a few things. The Bible prophesies the establishment of a global religious system in the end time. According to Scripture, the leader of that deceitful organization, this world religion, is going to have two objectives. He's going to endeavor to unite the world's religions under one belief system of tolerance. Hey, it doesn't matter what you believe, what I believe. Let's all just get along and love each other. Let's put the doctrines aside. Whether you can worship whatever you want to, but let's just love each other and get along. So, one belief system, tolerance. Let's be tolerant of everybody's beliefs. And then number two, he's going to use his position to influence all adherents to any of these religions to align with and to pledge allegiance to the prophesied end-time world government. Now, this world religion is in the latter stages of its formation, and the world's most recognized religious leader is beseeching the world to commit and adhere to the global governing efforts of the United Nations, the very seat of world government on the earth today. Let's get into some of the proof for that. The Crux, which is a Catholic news source, stated that the Pope is considering adding sin against ecology to the Church's catechism. So speaking to a group of lawyers recently, Pope Francis said that the Catholic Church is contemplating the introduction of an ecological sin to the compendium of the Church's teaching. I mean, wow. Making sin against the ecology a sin? And he said we have to introduce, we're thinking about it, and in the catechism of the Catholic Church, the sin against ecology, the sin against our common home, because it's a duty. And, you know, in his encyclical, Laudato Si, back in 2015, Pope Francis cited the saints' call to an ecological conversion, getting people to buy into the human-induced global warming climate change hoax, all the while supporting a world government. Of course, the goal of the encyclical was to call for a global political authority or a global government to manage the supposed global crisis. And when you tie sin into something as a Catholic, if the Pope says, hey, something's a sin, then you're talking about salvation at that point. So using a religious position to get people to buy into the propaganda of the United Nations, now you can see how a religious figure can use his influence to coerce his followers to align with the world government, the United Nations, the global governing propaganda. Hey, the United Nations is putting off this propaganda of this global warming, the human-induced global warming climate change propaganda, and now the Pope, going one step beyond his encyclical in 2015, he said, hey, we need to make this an ecological sin and perhaps put it in the catechism, a doctrinal belief system of the church, saying that, hey, this is a sin. People would take notice of it, then he wouldn't give them a choice. So if you're a Catholic, what do? Do you buy into that simply because they put it in the catechism? I mean, you're left with a real choice there, knowing that it's easily proven to be a hoax. But the Pope Francis has bought into this belief system in supporting a world government, number one, and in doing so, pushing the hoax of human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. It's prophesied in the Bible that this is exactly what will happen in the end time. Folks, it's a 2,000-year-old prophecy.
About our trip, it was a wonderful experience. We totally enjoyed the time spent with other believers, worshiping and experiencing the places where Christ walked. One of our favorites was being on Mount Moriah, where the Holy of Holies are, the Dome of the Spirit. And the teachings that Brother Baxter did was so enlightening. It was so much to take in. It will take us another month or two to really grasp the full extent of the knowledge we received on this trip. Our tour guide in Israel was fantastic. He was very knowledgeable. I think God chose him just for us. Thanks, Jana. Our lives will never be the same. We will try to do this tour again. Mike and Julie L., Cayman Islands.
Join us May 1st through May 16th, 2020, for a trip to the wonderful land of Israel and the Holy Roman Empire reborn.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
So, in looking at many of the ongoing fulfillments of Bible prophecy, staying in the same vein of this human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change propaganda, it's all about establishing a world government. Now, going on right now, the United Nations, the Madrid Climate Change Conference is happening now, COP25. And their goal is to bring the world together to consider ways to strengthen the implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement. It's all leading us into a one world government. That's what the goal of all of this is. Getting nations to buy into the Sustainable Development Goals and give financial commitments to support that. So it's going on now from December 2nd to the 13th in Madrid, Spain. So before I give you an update on this, let me kind of give you a little background about what's going on with this the International Panel on Climate Change and the climate policy, and leading us into this world government because of the scare tactics of the United Nations. Back in 2010, this is reported by What's Up With That, an IPCC official, an International Panel on Climate Change official, said that the climate policy is all about redistributing the wealth of the world. It's not about changing the climate. It's not about, like the Pope says, a sin against ecology. They don't really care about that. The goal behind all of this, all of the propaganda from the United Nations, is the establishment of a world government. During the International Panel Climate Change fifth assessment cycle, this was from 2008 to 2015, and I want to give you this before I get into the update. Some of you have heard about Professor Ottmar Edenhofer. He was the joint co-chair of the International Panel on Climate Change Working Group of the United Nations, the mitigation of climate change. Well, he was interviewed by Bernard Potter, and in the interview, the IPCC scientist said this, or he was an IPCC official, Ottmar Edenhofer. He said this, and I'm quoting, he said, basically, it's a big mistake to discuss climate policy separately from the major themes of globalization or a move towards a world government. He said the climate summit in Cancun back in 2010 at the end of the month is not a climate conference, even though it's called a climate summit, and there's a climate summit going on now in Madrid, Spain. But I promise you, they're not necessarily just talking about the climate. They're moving us towards a world government. He said, but it's not about the climate conference, but he said one of the largest economic conferences since the Second World War. He said, first of all, developed countries have basically expropriated the atmosphere of the world community. But one must say clearly, listen at this statement. He said, one must say clearly that we redistribute de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. It's a socialistic plank of the United Nations to redistribute the wealth of the world. That's the goal behind all of this. He goes on to say, obviously, the owners of coal and oil will not be enthusiastic about this, but one has to free theirself from the illusion that international climate policy is environment policy. That's not what it's all about. This is almost nothing to do with the environmental policy anymore. Now, this gentleman worked for the International Panel on Climate Change, the scientists that are bought and paid for by the United Nations to put out all this spin. And he said, look, it's not about the climate policy anymore. We're redistributing the wealth of the world. That's what we're doing. So now look at the climate conference being held in Madrid, Spain. I mean, El País reported that Pedro Sanchez is at the COP25 climate summit in Spain right now. He said that only a handful of fanatics deny the evidence. Well, I'm one of those handful of fanatics that deny the evidence. There is no evidence. It's simply not happening. It's a hoax. And he actually, the article actually said that the meeting should finish developing the Paris Climate Agreement to make it fully optional. And he said, this summit consolidates Spain as a country that is committed to global governance and multilateral forums. They're committed to a world government. That's what this climate policy is all about. Remember, what did Ottmar say? He said, it's not about climate policy anymore. It's about redistributing the wealth of the world. Moving us towards a world government, a socialistic one world government. Well, of course, then many sources, I've got mine from The Blaze, they're reporting that Nancy Pelosi was at the climate conference and she told them, hey, we're still in. Even after Donald Trump started the official process to withdraw from the Paris climate deal last month. Despite President Trump's official withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, which was sucking us into and our money into this world governing effort, Donald Trump said, no, we're out of that. Well, during Nancy Pelosi's speech at the 2019 UN Climate Conference just a few days ago, Nancy Pelosi said, this is a mission, this is a passion, this is a scientifically based approach, which it absolutely is not. I mean, what is it with these people and the truth? I mean, the fact is, I want to know the truth. If global warming, human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, was the truth, I'd want to know about it. Now, it's easily proven to be a hoax, but Nancy Pelosi says, no, this is a scientifically based approach. And she said that we are here to say to all of you at this climate forum, on behalf of the House of Representatives and the Congress of the United States, that even though Donald Trump says we're out, that we are still in. So you say, well, what in the world would our House Speaker be doing that for? Because she's a globalist. She's bought into this idea of world government, a socialistic world government. And she's saying, hey, no matter what our president does, pulling us out of that, we're still in. She actually made that statement. Why? Because we have many of our leaders here in the United States that have bought into this world governing body. I mean, every Democratic presidential candidate that's running for president right now has said, day one, I will rejoin us to the Paris Climate Agreement. I mean, they've bought into this idea of globalism, this one world government, that yes, we want the United States to yield up much of our sovereignty and our money to this world governing effort. That's what's going on at the the present climate summit, COP25, in Madrid, Spain, right now. And you know, it's such propaganda, everybody. I mean, originally we started out with human-induced global warming. Well, people, because it was hard to prove that we were global warming, because we started having these polar these ice storms and really cold winters, that it was hard to prove global warming. So they said, well, we need to change it. We need to go to climate change now. Because they couldn't sell global warming. It was easily disproven. Now we need to go to climate change. So every time there's a tornado or a hurricane or anything like that, a tsunami, that's a result of global warming, which leads to climate change. And our earth is going to burn up and go away just in a few years if we humans don't do something to stop that. I mean, even to the point where now they're saying climate change doesn't have as much shock value. I mean, coming from Breitbart, alarmists have proposed rebranding climate change now because they need a greater shock value. Climate change alarmists, they're pushing for a change in a vocabulary to scare people into taking global warming more seriously. They want to start with terms like global meltdown and climate collapse. I mean, they're saying that the terms global meltdown and global melting delivers a more negative image than mere global warming. And that the names signal that the ice caps are melting, but also create a more visceral image in the mind of individuals, that the real feeling of melting when it's too hot outside. Even though we've had record freezing temperatures just recently, but yet it's all about warming up. I mean, it's complete propaganda. And they said that a meltdown is a disastrous event that draws from the ultimate terror of nuclear meltdown and an apt metaphor for global destruction. What they're trying to do is, they don't care about the climate. They could care less about that. All they want you to do is to scare you. They realized global warming wasn't scaring people enough. So we went to climate change so they could blame every weather catastrophe on it. And now they're wanting to change it to global meltdown. They've even brought up the rhetoric even more. They also proposed the weaponized term scorched earth. All it is a scare tactic to trying to scare everybody into buying into this. That's what's going on in our world, folks. Don't buy into the United Nations propaganda of human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. I've had people email me and say, hey, Dave, you and Irvin don't believe in climate change. That's crazy. I absolutely believe the climate is changing, 100%. I mean, it was rainy and about 60 degrees this past weekend here in Dallas. But now it's sunny. The climate changed. And guess what? The climate has changed every day since God created this planet. And it's going to change every day until this human existence is over with. And so, yes, I do believe in climate change. I do not believe in the United Nations propaganda of human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change. That I do not believe in. That's absolutely a true statement because it's a complete hoax. And so don't buy into that, because what they're trying to do is to lead us into world government. That's the goal of all of this. Remember what Ottomar said. He said it's not about, and he worked for the IPCC. He said it's not about climate or the environment anymore. It's about redistributing the wealth of the world. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a socialistic world governing body. And they've got to get you in scare mode. They've got to get you in crisis mode so they can get you to yield up your sovereignty. And in the case of the Paris Climate Agreement, our money, financial commitments to this. Donald Trump said, no, it's a hoax. We're going to cut that off. Well, Nancy Pelosi just went over there and said, we're still in. Well, I can tell you right now, I'm not in on it. And I hope you aren't either. Okay. Now, I talked about some of the things that have happened throughout 2019. We've had so much ongoing prophetic fulfillment. I mean, a lot of times, some of these prophecies are not fulfilled in one day. We're watching the ongoing fulfillment of many of them, and then there comes a time when, hey, yes, that prophecy was fulfilled, it's come to pass, and then we move on. Well, throughout 2019, we watched many of the different prophecies, the ongoing fulfillment of many of them. So I'll get through as many of them as I can. I mean, I'm talking about Mark of the Beast, the world government, the world religion, the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire, a reborn Holy Roman Empire, the increase of the LGBTQ lifestyle. Yes, that's prophesied in Scripture, and yes, that lifestyle is increasing in our society. So let's get through as many of these as we can, and I'll give you some updates on all of them. The peace agreement, another thing. So the Mark of the Beast prophecy, let's start with that. So the prophecies found in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 through 18, and it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man, and his number is 666. So what's going to happen is that in the end time, when the Antichrist comes into power, he's going to usurp authority over an already fully functioning numbering system to economically sanction individuals to get them to bow down to his edicts. Well, that system is being set up right now. I mean, so the 666 technology, the question is it already here? Well, we're watching precursors to it. I mean, with current technology, including the NFC, the RFID, satellites, GPS systems, biometric systems, smart card applications, people can now be tracked pretty much everywhere. Their activities and transactions monitored anywhere in the world. I mean, I was just in Israel. I use my debit card like it's just free flow. I've been all over the world, and you can use that. I could use my Texans Credit Union bank card everywhere, globally. And the technology for the most demonic command and control scheme in history, the Mark of the Beast, is not only feasible, but we're watching it being put in place as we speak. I mean, back in January, we reported that China is using their social credit scores to reward and punish individuals, to get them to bow down to their edicts. Every citizen in China is assigned a social credit score. And moving on, and, based on factors such as the credit and payment history, their debt level, contracts, their behavior, I mean, are they jaywalking? I mean, they got cameras watching people, whether they're jaywalking or how they park, and I mean, everything they do. Personal preferences, interpersonal relationships. But the blacklisted individuals, they can't purchase high-speed rail or airline tickets or hotel rooms. They blacklisted them. And the China's use of big data to reward socially responsible behavior, this patriotism, or they punish nonconformity, their dissent. I mean, it's a foretaste of what it would be like under the Antichrist regime of enforced, unquestioning loyalty. I mean, think about it. That's why they're putting cameras everywhere. And they're wanting to get you to where they can digitally just monitor every move you make. Well, the Antichrist is going to love that type of system. So think about that. I mean, in May, this China-style social credit system, it's being implemented in more countries than just China. In Venezuela, they're thinking about it in Germany and other places. Now it's coming to Australia. The city of Darwin is adapting elements of these Chinese social credit systems for use in Australia. And I mean, it's crazy. And what's going on in Australia, New Zealand, and different things? I mean, I need to do a program one time just on that. I talked to a policeman that came on the tour with us from Australia. You would not believe what the policemen have to go through in Australia. Many of them are just turning in their badge and saying, I can't do it anymore. We'll do a program on that in the near future. Perhaps I will get him to be a special, because it's happening here in the United States. We're starting to see that. I've got a couple police friends of mine that I may try to have on when I do that program, and we'll see what's going on here in the United States, because the Antichrist will love usurping authority over a system like this. And folks, a lot of that's being set up around the world right now as we speak. What is it? It's precursors to the future time when the Antichrist will usurp authority over this numbering, this control system, to get people to bow down to his edicts in his world government.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If ever people needed to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and get your subscription today.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
You know, everybody, I mean, honestly, I'm just giving a treetop version of the ongoing fulfillment of Bible prophecy in this program. I mean, I could go for hours and hours giving you update after update on what's going on right now concerning the mark of the beast, world government, world religion, all these different things. I mean, think about this. The Bible says that the Antichrist is going to give all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Without that, they're not going to be able to buy or sell. This system is already being set up around the world. I mean, think about it. Back in July, we reported that in Sweden, cash was almost extinct and chip implants were replacing cash. I mean, more than 4,000 people have already had futuristic microchips implanted in their skin to carry out everyday activities and replace credit cards and cash. I mean, people have shown that they're happy to give up privacy for convenience, and that the chip is very convenient. So could we accept our data being shared very widely before we know the risk? I mean, think about that. I mean, would you, knowing the prophecies of the Bible, ever have an RFID chip put in your hand or in your forehead? I mean, I hope not. Hopefully that we've taught on this stuff long enough to where you would never put a mark of identification on your person. And well, I don't care if it's a chip, an invisible tattoo, anything like that. I would never do that, understanding the prophecies of the Bible. And then, you know, I mean, it's the ongoing fulfillment of Bible prophecy. People are getting used to putting these chips in them. There have been people that are here in the United States that have done it. There are tens of thousands of people overseas that have done it. Sweden's only one nation. But there are people actually here in the United States as well. You know, the fact is, everybody, is that total human control, this control grid, it's really almost complete. I mean, they're working feverishly on it. You know, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Everything, this 5G technology, being able to track everybody and everything and what they're doing. There are people that are fighting against it. I mean, as corporations harvest consumer data and governments conduct security sweeps, monitoring and tracking everyone it's commonplace, and huge databases are compiled on every single citizen. Every one of you has a digital footprint. I mean, phone conversations are recorded, emails are read, social media is monitored, purchases are registered, your DNA is collected, pervasive cameras and documents, they document our every movements and activities. I mean, the Antichrist total human control grid, it's being put in place as we speak. Now, say the Antichrist is on the scene. Not yet. But remember, he will usurp authority over a fully functioning grid and control system at that time. The entire population is soon going to be impacted by artificial intelligence enhanced next level surveillance. Wait till 5G is fully implemented. You're talking about immediate information, just, I mean, everything you do. And there are a lot of people that are fighting against that. However, there may be many uninformed or unwilling participants in that very scheme that will implement the mark of the beast system described in Revelation 13, 16 through 18. Hopefully, our message is getting through to not be part of that. You can't be part of a system where you take a mark of identification on your person and pledge allegiance to, thereby worshiping this Antichrist and this world governing system. You can't be a part of that. And as we get further into this, we'll keep reporting on it, and we're going to make sure that we warn you, and then it'll be up to you to not comply. And so, very, very important time. But we're talking about ongoing fulfillment of these things. Look at the heightened surveillance. I mean, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even in the 80s. I mean, when I graduated high school, I didn't worry about any of this stuff. And then throughout the 90s and then the 2000s, and now it's just like it's increasing, people tracking your every move. Well, why? There's a reason behind all that. There's a grand design. It's not by accident that all this stuff's happening. And so it's very important that we keep on top of it, because this is the ongoing fulfillment of a 2,000-year-old prophecy by John in Revelation chapter 13. Now, let's talk about the Middle East peace agreement. Many things happened on the way towards that. You know, if, capital I, capital if Donald Trump's peace agreement is the agreement that, let's say they got that signed, and if that has all the characteristics of the prophesied peace agreement, it would start the final 7 years. We don't know if that's going to be the one right now. Let's be honest about it. But he is pushing. I mean, the Bible says, so what's the Bible say about a peace agreement? Why am I talking about that? The Bible says, and he, the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. It's a final 7-year period. In the midst of that final 7-year period, the Antichrist will cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, the overspreading of abominations he will make desolate, and even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. That's Daniel 9:27. What's the fulfillment of that going to look like? Well, the Bible prophesies that a peace agreement will be signed between the Palestinians and the Israelis. That agreement's going to put the Palestinians in control of much of Judea and Samaria, the modern-day West Bank, and place the Temple Mount under a sharing arrangement between Muslims and Jews and many religions around the world. A lot of people are going to be able to go there and pray and do things. So the peace deal, it's also going to allow Jews to build their third temple on the Temple Mount without disturbing the Dome of the Rock or the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Not in the city of David. I'm working on an article right now that will prove the temple. A lot of people are trying to say that the temple was built in the city of David. It was not. It was built on the Temple Mount. And I got some further proof and pictures while I was in Israel to prove that. When I finish the article, we'll put it in the magazine, one of the next magazines coming up. I think you'll really enjoy it. So the signing of this peace agreement is going to mark the beginning of the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the physical second coming of Jesus Christ. It's going to be one of the greatest prophetic fulfillments in the last 2,000 years. It's a prophecy with a timeline, a time stamp on it. So the peace plan, the release of that's been delayed. Many of you know about it. In December, back in 2018, a year ago now, the Trump administration announced that the deal of the century, this American peace plan by Donald Trump, it was ready to be released. But on December 24th, 2018, Israel's government, it was dissolved and new elections were scheduled for April 9th. Well, that threw the whole thing into just a whirlwind, Israel's political system and the peace agreement. And many of you have followed this. I mean, Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu asked Donald Trump not to present his peace plan until after Israel's elections were over and the new government was formed. Well, of course, Donald Trump, his administration, they complied with that with Netanyahu's request. When the election results came in, Netanyahu's Likud party had captured the most seats in the Knesset. The problem is that Netanyahu was unable to put together a coalition of at least 61 seats required to establish a government. I mean, it's nothing like here in the United States. I mean, the night the election's held, that next morning we know who the president is. I mean, early in the next morning, you know who the president is that night. Over in Israel, it's nothing like that. So in June, the elections were held in April. In June, so what happens is the elections were held in April, and they still hadn't formed a government yet because it was taken into a new elections in September, a second election in 1 year, which is unprecedented. I'm not going to get into all the details about it, all the seats and everything. Many of you know about that. I don't really have time to today. But it was taken into a second election in 1 year. That was in September. And they still weren't able to form a government. And it looks like, after all is said and done, we may be going into a third election because they've only got a few days left to form a government. It looks like it's not going to happen between Gantz and the Blue and White Party. They're not willing to deal. This last meeting between them and Netanyahu, they weren't willing to form a government. They're too divided. And so it looks like we may be going into a third election in 1 year or within just over a year. And so it's really become a mess. Well, this whole time, Donald Trump has been waiting here saying, I want to release the plan, but I can't until you guys form a government and I see who I'm working with. Well, back in June, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, he unveiled the economic portion of the Middle East peace plan. At an international conference in Bahrain, Jared Kushner presented the economic portion of that Trump's peace deal, the deal of the century, and it was a $50 billion peace to prosperity Middle East economic plan, this workshop that would create a global investment fund to elevate the Palestinian and neighboring Arab state economies. But at that time, it was just the economic portion, not the political portion, which would have all the salient issues. Now, we know that the peace agreement, if this is the one and if it was to get signed, it would mark the beginning of the final 7 years. Well, of course, Netanyahu initially, he expected to reveal the political portion of the Israeli peace Palestinian deal of the century shortly after the mid-September election. Donald Trump wanted to. Well, of course, they still haven't formed a government yet. And Netanyahu's failure to secure a parliamentary majority delayed the peace plan announcement even further, now almost a year. So eventually a government is going to be formed in Israel, and President Trump has promised that as soon as that government's formed, he's going to put his peace plan on the table. Well, the Bible prophesies that when there is a peace plan signed by the Israelis and Palestinians, it's going to be the marker that indicates the beginning of the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the return of Jesus Christ to the earth. Will Donald Trump's peace plan be that? We don't know at this point. It looks like it could be. I mean, it's got the best chance of getting a peace agreement signed of anyone that I've ever seen. But again, these things can change on the dime. I mean, we thought that Israel would have had a government by now. But I mean, unless something happens, a miracle almost, they're going to go into a third election here. And so we really don't know at this point. But once they will get a government formed at some point. Donald Trump will roll out his peace agreement. If they were to get something signed, it had all the characteristics of the biblical peace agreement, then it would start the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon, the second coming of Jesus Christ. Many things are kind of waiting on Israel's government right now to see where everything lands over there. Now, the next thing, and I think I'll have to get into this after we get back from the break, is the Sixth Trumpet War. Moving towards that, the situation in the Middle East. And the Sixth Trumpet War is World War III. And so I know that we're coming up to a break here. I'm not going to dive off into this until we get back, but it's found in Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 21. And a lot of things are being shaken up in the Middle East right now, especially right there along the Euphrates River region. So when I get back from the break, we'll dive off into that. And then if I have time in this last segment, we'll get off into the increase of the LGBTQ lifestyle in our society, another prophecy.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-END-TIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
So let's talk real quick with the time I have left about the Sixth Trumpet War, and then I'll see if I can get into some of the LGBTQ stuff and the Holy Roman Empire revived. But the prophecies found, Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 21. I may only read through 16, we'll see. But it says, "And I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, Release the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. The four angels who had been prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year were released to kill a third of mankind. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200 million, and I heard the number of them. So the fulfillment, the Bible prophesies a war. It's before Armageddon. Those are two separate wars. Sixth trumpet war, Armageddon. And it's going to ultimately kill 1/3 of mankind. Approximately, at this point, just over 2.5 billion people. Only in our generation has a nation had the necessary population to field an army of 200 million soldiers. Of course, China, India, and the followers of Islam each have a large enough population to fulfill that prophetic scripture. One of those three will provide the manpower to field an army of 200 million. According to the prophecy, World War III will emanate from the Euphrates River region, which is located in the nations of Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. It's why we watch that region like a hawk. Now, let's give a little status update to the Middle East. I know a lot of you guys follow this stuff. I get emails from you all the time. I got a guy in actually more than one person in the Middle East that kind of is helping us stay up to date on some of this stuff. And I don't really want to divulge their name right now. Perhaps I may in the future if they said it was okay. But let's just say I've got an inroad in some of there, and it's really neat to have that. But, as it takes more aggressive steps, I talked to a guy that we were talking about, a very influential person that works at the Pentagon. Obviously, I can't say his name on the air, but a really, really good friend of ours. And this is a neat story. I'll just tell you this before I get off into this Middle East update situation. A friend of ours and works at the Pentagon. We talked to him here a while back. I talked to him, I don't know, maybe in September. And he said, I've been reading you guys' magazine for years and years and years. And he said, I wondered how you guys were so up to date on some of this stuff, because I was reading your magazine and he knew. He had the highest level of security clearance right under where there's Donald Trump, and then the second tier, and then right under that, he had that level of security clearance. And he said, I'm watching what's going on in the Middle East, and I'm watching your magazine and thinking, man, these guys are on top of stuff. And the fact of the matter is we were just following some of our Middle East sources and going with the prophecies of the Bible. And he said, you guys were spot on. Well, it's pretty neat, because he was saying that a lot of this has to do with, a lot of us are looking right there in the Middle East in those players. But when you talk about this sixth trumpet war, you're going to have to pull in the big boys. It's not going to be Iran against Israel and you're going to kill 1/3 of the world's population. You're going to have to bring in some of the big boys, the Russias, the Chinas, the United States. You're going to have to get some of these major players involved in that conflict. And so I like to look at the whole thing as a whole. But at the crux of it, the Bible says it's going to emanate from the Euphrates River region. So, as it takes more aggressive steps to curtail trade and keep the oil shipping lanes open, you understand kind of what's going on in the Middle East right now. The United States continues to put economic pressure on Iran. Now, I watch Iran like a hawk, because they're the ones that are trying to surround Israel. Think about it. It's not Lebanon trying to surround Israel. It's not Syria trying to surround Israel, or Saudi Arabia calling for, the death of little Satan, which is Israel, and big Satan, which is the United States. It's all Iran. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism on the planet. So I watch them. And I also look at who are their allies. If this thing kicks off, and let's say the United States does go against Iran, well, who are we really going to be fighting? Let's face it, the United States could pretty easily wipe out Iran. But it's their allies. Those are the ones I'm looking at, like, who are these? Hey, I'm on the playground and you bloody my nose, I'm going to go home and get my brother. That type of situation. When we get into it with Iran, I'm not really worried about Iran per se. It's their allies, who they're going to bring in. Because at the end of the day, and this is what my Pentagon friend was telling me, it's all about the oil in the Middle East. You look at the Middle East and think, man, it's all sand and rocks, and who really cares? Well, the fact of the matter is, it's that black liquid. That's what it all boils down to. All these allies, Trump said it. Hey, when we go in there, we need to protect the oil. We need to take the oil. Well, do you think Russia and China and all these other countries aren't looking at that as well? So Iran is Russia and China. They're allies. So if we go into this and this thing kicks off, and because the United States and Russia has said we're not going to allow, or the United States and Israel has said we're not going to allow Iran to create a nuclear weapon. Well, if we were to go to war over that, I promise you, and they're saying, hey, Donald Trump says I'm all about the oil. We need to go in there and take the oil. If you think if we didn't go at it with Iran, that Russia and China aren't going to get involved? I mean, I watch that scenario like a hawk, I promise you. So, especially from what my friend told me, that, hey, at the end of the day, it's all about the oil. And so, you look at the tensions between the Kurds and the Turks and the Syrians and Iraqis and all of this stuff. I mean, things can flare up at any moment. And, there's the new alignment of the United States with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan facing off against Iran and Russia. I mean, there's always something going on right there. Most of the conflict on the planet is right there where this Euphrates River War is going to kick off. And with such an alignment, these different alignments forming right before our very eyes, we could easily become unnerved by the possibility of a war which would destroy a third of mankind. I mean, the Bible says that it's going to happen. And we know that Bible prophecies, they always come to pass. There's not even a small chance that they won't come to pass. So in going through some of the ongoing prophetic fulfillment, we watch these things very close. I mean, Iran is marching closer to its goal, to wipe Israel off the map. Now, you got to look at that because for years, decades now, Iran's military aggression and this menacing public threats of eradicating Israel, and they continue to grow in boldness and frequency. Iran's ruling theocracy believes that the supreme leader is Allah's representative on the earth, and that whatever the supreme leader says is the voice of Allah, which must be realized and enacted by these true believers. So if he says we need to wipe Israel off the face of the planet, these people believe that that's what they should be doing. Now that's a big threat. And so why I watch that, I would never do that. But if you've got Russia and China over your back shoulder saying, hey, we've got your back if this thing goes, you never know. The Bible says something's going to happen. I don't know what that scenario is. Irvin Baxter doesn't know. None of us know. It's all speculation, but I look at the history, what's been going on for years, and I watch Iran. Could it be something else? Sure. But I really watch Iran because those are the ones, they have the allies to draw into this global conflict. Now, the question is Iran and the U.S. headed for war? Well, Iran and the United States, they're edging closer to war. Back in April, there were reports of the U.S. naval buildup in the Middle East. We've been taking troops and ships and things in there. And Iran's threatening to block the oil shipping lanes in the Straits of Hormuz. The narrow waterway at the end of the Persian Gulf. 18 million barrels of oil pass through there each day. And Iran threatened to block that. Well, the Trump administration, they announced not to renew waivers on sanctions against importers of Iranian oil. And they said that we're absolutely not going to allow that to happen. That sharply accelerates the Trump administration's goal of reducing Iran's oil exports to zero. And Brian Hook, the U.S. Special Representative for Iran, he's a senior advisor to the Secretary of State. He promised the public that the U.S. military will keep the waterways open at all cost. Now, we haven't come to direct blows right there, but we've come awful close. And the Trump administration says that, we've been dealing with drones and things like that, but they've never hammered one of our battleships. Let's put it like that. And, the fact of the matter is that if you look at the sanctions, that they're only going to be lifted, the sanctions that we have on their nuclear program, once they're lifted, they would only be lifted that once Iran gives up its nuclear aspirations. That's another thing besides the Straits of Hormuz. In your honest opinion, what do you think the chances are of them giving up their nuclear ambitions? That's never going to happen. And, they believe that eventually the Iranians are going to be forced to back to renegotiating them. That's what the Trump administration is hoping for. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Those people are the number one state sponsor of terrorism on the planet. There's no way they're going to give up their nuclear aspirations. Think about it. They're not thinking with a sound, rational mind. You can't deal with them kind of people. And are we crippling them economically? Sure. But I guarantee you they've got ways of making money other ways because there are a lot of people on the earth that rely on their oil. And so, they have a lot of allies. Russia and China are allies of Iran. So, I don't have much time left today. I wish I could have got through more, but the fact of the matter is that throughout 2019, we saw many, many ongoing fulfillments that lead to the fulfillments of these prophecies. They're ongoing. We're watching events that are leading up to the absolute fulfillment of them. The Bible prophesies in the book of Luke that the LGBTQ, the agenda would be increasing in the end time. The Bible says, as it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what it's going to be like in the end at the second coming of Jesus Christ at that time, and just prior to that. That's what it's going to be like. Well, I used to think there's no way it could get that bad, but right now, think about it. A presidential candidate, Pete Buttigieg. He's an open homosexual. He's got a guy that he calls his husband. He's running for the president of the United States. I never would have thought that in my lifetime, that I would see something like that. But that's what's happening. We're here in 2019. And, I could go through many different things. The establishment of the reborn Holy Roman Empire and all kinds of different prophecies. The fact of the matter is, folks, is that we truly are living in the end time. We're not looking for that time to come. We're there. And we need to keep on top of this stuff. You need to talk to your friends and family and your sphere of influence about it, because there's some things you will want to be involved in the end time and that you won't want to be involved in.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.